I think that'll eventually reach higher and higher. So
I think it takes a combination of both things, and that's in the context that I've been doing the Human Rights Defense Center. We started out as the most grassroots of organization. We're an all-volunteer organization until 1996, for the first 6 years of our existence. And I think on the one hand, you need stuff happening at the grassroots level. On the other hand, we just wrapped up a successful campaign with the FCC to get them to cap the cost of prison phone calls at, thank you, for everyone who gets phone calls, from people in prison or jail. I mean, that's a huge thing. I mean, that's literally going to put tens of millions of dollars back into the pockets of consumers. But part of the thing is that, we did that at the national level, but only for interstate calls. For in-state calls, we still have to do that at the local level. So, I think there's a place for both of them. And I think we need to do both. I don't think it's an either-or solution. It's just, unfortunately, it's just a matter, it takes a lot more resources to do stuff at a national level than it does at a local level. But I think that one of the key things, though, is that I think everyone should be looking at is, what can I do or what can we do? And one of the things I say is, anywhere you go to in America, chances are you're living within 10 miles of a jail, that chances are the conditions are pretty crappy, and there's no oversight or accountability going on there. So it's not like, hey, you have to go 500 miles away to find something that you can do. There's usually something you can do right there, right here in your own community.
Can you speak to the number of developmentally disabled or formerly mentally retarded people? Can you speak to the number of developmentally disabled, formerly known as the mentally retarded, that are in U.S. prisons? And can you tell me if they are aware that they are eligible for Social Security disability benefits?
Congress has made sure that Congress actually enacted laws so that anyone in prison cannot receive Social Security benefits. But as far as the number of people in prison that are developmentally disabled, it's fairly large, and the only place that there's even concrete statistics on that is places like California as a result of class action lawsuits designed to secure benefits under the Americans with Disabilities Act for developmentally and physically disabled prisoners. So, and that's actually one of the things that, as I mentioned, prison conditions tend to be pretty bad, and in general that's assuming you're not mentally disabled and you're physically fit, and if you're mentally or physically disabled, prison conditions are all that much worse. It's almost like the punishment plus.
Well, I wanted to mention that the Supermax state level prison has been closed here. That usually gets applause, but we won't waste any time on it. But the federal one is still open, and Durbin was influential, our senator was influential in getting, the Supermax closed, even though it's a state issue. But he did get special money to have Thompson reopened as Guantanamo in Will County. I guess that's where it is. So,
bring home the pork, so to speak.
Well, I wanted to ask about in the hole, the scandal of torture by isolation that we have in this country, and what is the legal proceedings on that? Have there been cases in the past? It's clearly cruel and unusual punishment, and I just want to know if you have a way of reviewing how it stands now, and
sure.
Has this just been ignored for all these years?
No, it hasn't. There's actually big campaigns going on that. We're the Human Rights Defense Center. We're active on that. We just did a big story on it in last year, in fact, giving a big overview on it. But as far as the courts go, the courts have pretty much they've upheld the whole concept of supermax, of total isolation. The only line that they've drawn is that of placing mentally ill people in prolonged isolation because it makes their mentally illness worse. But putting sane people in there until they go insane is perfectly okay. Then once they go crazy, they'll take them out, stabilize them in another facility, drug them up, and then as soon as they stabilize and get better, then they stick them back in. That's so far the best we've been able to get out of our court system and our judiciary. And I think one of the things that is illustrated, I think the weakness of prison reform and any type of prison movement in this country is the fact that for the last 40 years, virtually all prison reform and prison change in this country has largely come about through litigation and the judiciary. And I think all that does is just merely illustrates, I think, the cowardness and opportunism and cruelty of our political branches of the executive and legislative branches, the fact that they haven't done that. And the judges complain that, you know, hey, we're judges, we're not really meant or designed or qualified or capable of running prison systems or whatever, and frankly, they're absolutely right. To the extent that they've tried to drag some of the prison systems into the 19th century, you know, that's okay, and that's been the best we've been able to hope for and the best we've gotten. But when you think about the fact that that on issues like that of supermax prisons, you know, torture by isolation, prisoners working at hard labor for no wages, you know, chattel slavery is the best term for it. You know, the courts are just like, you know, hey, you know, we're bound by the Constitution, and that's the floor, and so, you know, what's setting the floor here is an 18th century document that wasn't that great to begin with. So, you know, so I think those are some of the bigger problems, and I think that's been one of the problems, I think, of prison reform in this country, is that we've had to rely so much on the judiciary because we're so politically weak.
So thanks for sharing your important work and wishing you all strength for what you do. I was intrigued with your comment on Governor Cuomo's using HUD funding to build prisons in terms of the warehousing or the housing for poor. Could you speak a bit more? Is this a trajectory? What happened to that, and where can we find more out about that?
We've reported on Prison Legal News, but usually I think it's one of those things like, you know, thank God for Google. You know, if you just Google Governor Cuomo and prison construction or prison funding, you know, the stuff comes up. And the thing is that I think that's one of the things that with a lot of I think one of the things that we do with Prison Legal News is we comb a variety of resources, mostly the news wires and stuff like that. But I think that's one of the key things to note is that, you know, none of this, I think there's some people that are conspiracy theorists and they want to treat the criminal justice system as some big, either a racist conspiracy or some type of fascist conspiracy or whatever, and it's not, because a conspiracy by definition is secret. And this is pretty much wide out in the open. I mean, you know, it comes up to legislative votes, they hold votes on it, everyone votes for it. And that's the key thing is when you look at like the legislative votes, I mean, you know, this stuff doesn't, I mean, there isn't even token opposition to this stuff. I mean, you know, the Supreme Soviet in the heydays of Brezhnev had more dissent on stuff than criminal justice legislation does in this country. And you know, I think that's one of the things too, like when I talked about the elimination of and that's also one of the things too where I think that some people think that, oh, that there's a difference between the political parties on this, that, oh, you know, the Democrats are somehow any better at that. You know, I look at Bill Clinton as being the worst thing that's happened to American prisoners, if not in American history, at least in living memory. You know, he's the one that gave us the Prison Litigation Reform Act, the Anti-Terrorism and Effective Death Penalty Act, and he's the one that curbed what legal service corporation funds could be used to represent poor people, including people in prison. And he's also one who eliminated federal funding, Pell Grants, for incarcerated students. You know, so, you know, that's one of the things why, and you know, and Governor Cuomo, I think that's one of the things that, in some respects, he gets high marks. Well, he was against the death penalty, and you know, I think he was the last official elected to statewide public office in this country who was publicly against the death penalty. And I say, you know, hey, more power to him. That was great. But then he also doubled the Texas prison system. You know, Ann Richards in Texas. You know, I think before George Bush and then Governor Perry, she had quite the body count on the death penalty, and she doubled the size of the Texas prison system. And I think that's, you know, kind of the American political reality that we live in. And that's why I say is that, you know, when you look at mass incarceration, and okay, who are the political voices that are opposed to it? It's a deafening silence. You know, it's like pretty much everyone is down with it.